tenderloin. It's the tenderest, most tender of all the tender steaks. It's so tender that every cooking technique makes it tougher. But this technique today is going to honor everything there is about a very delicate tender tenderloin. We're gonna poach it. Whenever you're grilling or searing a tenderloin, all that exterior, you're getting some flavor, but it's really hammering the tenderloin proteins in a way that just make it even tougher and drier. So there's not a lot you can do to tenderloin to make it more tender, but poaching it will ensure that it stays as tender as possible. I'm gonna show it on the control-free comb, and it has a probe and it's very delicate, but you can do this on a stove as well, or on even a dumb stove with no controls really. You just have to really monitor the temperature of the poaching liquid. And we're gonna do precision poaching, so really monitored low temperature, about 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And a 1-inch fillet is gonna take 25 minutes to poach maybe, and you slice it and serve it. First thing I'm gonna do is get my poaching liquid together. I just wanted this to be something really simple, cool technique that you can try at home real easily. Off the shelf broth. If you can, get a low sodium one. Low sodium one will just allow you to have more control over the salt at the end of the day. So broth goes in. I'm gonna use the whole thing, you know, and then I want even more punchy umami, so I put a ton of Maggi in. And then you can experiment with other savory stuff or more beef bouillon, but it ended up being a quart of broth and about 30 grams of Maggi. I'm gonna use the probe control for the Control Freak, just because I can. But if you just had any thermometer, you'd be golden. So whatever thermometer works. I want probe control 140. And I'm gonna do medium heat. Again, I am cooking on this, but you can totally do this technique on a regular stovetop. The only thing you need is a little thermometer to make sure your liquid doesn't get above 140 or so. You're gonna have some fluctuation in temperature, that's okay. But I want a poaching liquid about 140 to poach a tenderloin. That'll be a core temperature of 120 or so. And again, it's preference. But here we go. I've got tenderloins. I didn't even throw salt all over them because this is broth and we're gonna add salt later. So you don't need to salt them. These are ready to go. I've got herbs to finish. All I'm doing right now is waiting for broth to come up. It says it's 116. I can put them in now though. The main reason I wouldn't put them in now if I was on a regular stove is you don't know if your broth temperature is like on its way up. So what you want to do is wait for your temperature to stabilize, because you don't want to put the poach, or you don't want to put the tenderloin in and then it goes to 175. Then it's going to make a gray, rubbery tenderloin. We just want it to be 140. So you do want to wait for it to heat up, stabilize. Then we can drop our tenderloins in. Put the lid on. That'll help marginally. We're close enough. We're 139, 140. Tenderloins go in. You ready for this? I don't trust them. These are small, but also I don't like the weird line around them, and then you have to untie it later. And you know, if you're poaching, they're like neutral buoyancy, you know, slightly negative buoyancy. And so there's no reason to trust them. They're just gonna hang out, you know? So that's it. So the steaks are in. This is the leanest, from a fat perspective, the leanest steak and the leanest steak recipe. We're not even gonna add butter to the sauce, none of that. So the broth is fat-free. Tenderloin's like hardly any fat in it at all. And when we finish the sauce, there's gonna be like no fat in there. I'm just saying that because tenderloin's really lean dish, and sometimes you can add cream and all this stuff, and that's great. But this one, I'm just honoring the tenderloin the most. That's why I chose poaching technique. So it's super tender. It's gonna honor the tenderness, and it's gonna honor the leanness, and it's really freaking good. A really high umami too at the end. So these just poach. After say 5, 10, maybe 10 minutes or something, take the temperature. If your poaching liquid is actually 140 degrees, the steaks aren't gonna cook more than 140 degrees. I'm doing hotter than core poaching because I want to speed up the poaching a little bit. So I want to take 20 to 30 minutes. I don't want to wait around all day. But I also want, you know, a rare steak for filet. So I'm going to check them and probably pull these at 115, 120 because I don't want to go that hot, you know. You could do a cooler poach too. It'll just take you longer. So I found after all the trials I was playing with, 140 is a nice temperature to get you gently to say a rare or medium rare, and you're done. I'm going to throw a little bit of thyme in there just for the super aroma of it, and there's like fresh oil in the thyme. You don't need to mix it in, just put it in like a tea. That's going to add a lot of thyme flavor. You can add any aromats you want, but what I wouldn't do for this poaching technique is add tons of herbs and tons of garlic and tons of stuff. That's really, the flavor's not going to come out over a short poach, and that flavor's not going to stick to the meat, despite what you might think. And then a lot of that stuff is going to get in the way of having like a fluid environment where they can evenly cook, and they're also going to leave a lot of texture and funny marks on them. You know, if you put a raw tenderloin that sits on garlic and then it cooks, it's going to have like a garlic there. The other thing I do with this poaching technique is give them a little stir, meaning flip them around, you know, even though it is a nice poaching liquid and they're kind of free-spirited in there. If they hang out on the bottom, the bottom of most pots there is going to be hotter than the top of the liquid or the average liquid temperature, and you don't want them to just overcook on the bottom. So I just give them a little movement every once in a while, nice and easy. And if you really wanted to, you can put a lid on. It'll just keep some of the heat in there. Okay, tenderloin's poaching. It's almost done, actually. So I'm going to start working on the sauce, but I want a bunch of fresh green in there, too. So I'm going to do delicate parsley. You could do chives. You could do super tiny chives, super fine tarragon, super fine chervil, all the fiends herbs. You can also put some more aromats in there. You can roll the whole pile up like that. And then you real fine go through this whole pile. Nice and fine shreds. I'm just going to keep running my knife through it. When you're cutting herbs too, anytime you want to cut any herbs, the classic mistake people make is like just up and down. You really need to be forward and back. Okay, dun 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 dun. Tenderloins. They're hanging out. They're being tender. They're done. These are more done than I want. These are 125, 128. So I'm gonna start making the sauce. On the control freak home, I do 390. But at home, probably not gonna really know the temperature. You just go for it. So first thing, sugar. So we don't want a sugary sauce. We want some sweetness. It's about 5-6 grams of sugar. We want some sweetness, but we mostly want body, like that. That would normally come out of like carrots and onions and all that good stuff. So I'm gonna burn it. It just takes a second. You can see it's already starting to burn a little bit. It's good. It's starting to get a little burn in the edges. And again, I don't go to caramel like light brown because it's going to be sugary and caramely. Here we go. You want to burn it. See, that's pretty darn burnt. Here we go. Ready? And then stop the burning. We don't need a lot of sauce. Resume cooking. Not on 390. Let's go a little lower. See, the color's like darker already too. All these broths are different, and I got low sodium, so I just give it a taste. Definitely need salt. Salty salt. You'll notice the tenderloins too. I just took them off the heat. If you're at home, any stove. If you have another control freak, you can put it on that one or whatever, but just put it off to the side. There's enough to keep it hot for a while, you know? So it's just being warm over here while I finish the sauce. Okay, I like a lot of gelatin. I like it big. But you can decide how much you want to put in there. I'm not cutting it with anything, so you don't want to just throw a big pile in. You kind of want to bloom it. It's called like sprinkling it on top, you know? So layer on top. Make a mess. That's one pack. I'll let it start to dissolve a little bit. I'm going to do another pack. This is also a lot of protein. You know, gelatin is like pure protein. So it makes it a little bit healthier, a little more protein. More umami for sure. And it just has that nice mouthfeel. This is pretty. It looks like a little pond or something, you know? A little more salt. I think that sugar went a little too far because I was showing camera. I'm going to add a little more sweetness and a little more salt. I need like one more pot or a bowl or a cup or something. What I like to do is take a sieve. Here, I'll crank this guy up. Boil it. So the sauce is done as far as flavor goes. You could add another pack of gelatin too if you want. It'll make it just that much more mouthfeel. Resume cooking. Or you can reduce it a little bit. It's up to you. It depends on the broth. But a broth like this, burn a little sugar, 5-6 grams, 300 grams of the broth goes in, salt, gelatin. You could add a couple more packs if you want. It just depends on the texture you want. More gelatin, the more sticky mouthfeel. I'm going to do one quick hard boil here. And then we're going to strain it. I'm just going to run right through here. But depending on how much sauce you have and how much gelatin you put in there, it might run a little bit slower. But it should just look like nice tea or coffee coming through. Let's also get out little bits of gelatin that clogged up. It's not a ton of stuff in there, but there's like chunks of gelatin, and there's stuff at the bottom of the pot too, like little still black flakes of sugar that didn't dissolve all the way. Depends what broth you buy, you know, to start with. But this one was pretty nice and clean to start with. Okay, so parsley, I just like a lot. And that's the sauce. Okay, this is the last thing. We're ready to serve poached tenderloin. It's super tender. However, I'm going to put one here. I'm going to put one here. You see the poaching liquid's ever too hot to put your fingers in, it's like destroyed the tenderloin, and it's already gone overcooked. Should be nice mellow temperature. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to serve this very quickly, but right now they're like a perfect 130 degrees. See how tender these look? Look at this. They're going to be like hard to slice because they're so tender, and that's a good thing. That is like super jiggly. There's no grilled tenderloin or seared tenderloin that'll ever be that tender. Because when you cook tenderloins traditional ways, they get tougher. But these are super, super gentle, super delicate. I don't want to put my tenderloins on cold plates. I'm going to warm the plates up. But what I'm doing here is I'm going to bring this broth to a boil, like an actual boil. And just to get a little more heat on these so you don't serve cold tenderloin, we're going to do like a 2-second dunk, slice it, serve it. That's it. We're done. And you'll notice I pulled these guys out. I'm not leaving them in and turning the temperature up because that'll overcook them. Take them out. Crank this temperature up. Like I'm cranking it. Come on. Come on. All the way. And once it's nice and hot and boiling and you're ready to serve, I'm going to dunk them for literally 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and that's it. And it will slightly perk up the outside of them too, because it'll be a different temperature, a hotter temperature, so the proteins will perk up. That'll make it easier to slice. It'll make it a little bit snappier. It'll be super tender, but a little bit snappier, so there's a little contrasted texture. And then it'll be hotter on the plate too. Now that we're cranking up the temperature, now the broth's actually starting to get cloudy because there's proteins in there that's called like aqueous phase solution when the proteins are basically emulsified in the liquid, but now they're coagulating in there, so it's getting cloudy. I didn't want to put 2 tiny tenderloins on cold plates, so warmed up the plates a little bit. So this says it's to 12 now. It's not quite boiling, but it's about to start boiling it real quick. I just need it about this hot anyway. So real quick, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 5 seconds, not more than that. I can see it already tightening up. So you can see the difference here too. Gray, pink, a little perkier. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Don't throw it in and let it just sit on the bottom either. That's it, they're hotter. Now you gotta get on the plate. Here we go. This whole tenderloin is about making it as tender as possible. So super tender tenderloin, a poach technique, which is gonna make sure that the tenderloin stays tender, and now you slice it. You can do it a bunch of different ways. I've liked just kind of slicing a few slices against the grain like this. It can fall apart a little bit, but I haven't found that to be like a issue because I just like shingle them back on the plate. So I'll go against the grain like this one more time. That's it, 3 slices. I can feel the knife going brrrr. You can feel like it's zippering across the grain. And this is it. One little slice, one little slice, one little slice. Poached tenderloin. Seems like kind of English or like poached tenderloin. Is that like boiled? Really good though, really tender. Okay. Poached tenderloin. Can't get more tender than that. You can pour it off to the side or you can pour it all over. That's pretty stuff. See that fine parsley brings like a lot to the table. It's like maple-y color. You can hit it with one more little bit of salt. That's poached tenderloin. It's the most tender cut of meat on the cow, and poaching is the most delicate, tender cooking technique we have for steaks at all. So I'm also slicing it against the grain. The whole principle of this whole recipe with the technique being paired together is maximum tenderness. This one looks like it's meant to be served to the queen. Those little green flakes, it looks like a gilet with the pink. Pretty good looking for boiled meat, huh? It's poached. A knife? Yeah, right. Look at this. Look at this. Watch this, I won't even chew it.
Subscribe to our channel and visit ChefSteps.com for more tips, recipes, guides, and tools to help you level up in the kitchen.